great to be joined by the coach, Scott Spinelli. Scott, welcome back. It's always great talking basketball with you.
Always great to be here. Thanks again for having me. It's a lot of fun when I connect with you. Thank you.
Hey, let's start with Jabari Smith. It looks like he's going to be the first overall guy. You watch his game, Scott. What do you see?
Look, I was just talking to another person about him, and to me, what I think is really obvious about him is, number one, he's an enormous talent. A young person with this type of skill. He can really shoot the three ball. Obviously, his mid-range game is he's very efficient. He doesn't look to force a lot of things. He has that uncanny ability in a crafty way to kind of create space to get his shot off. And I think he's an enormous talent. I think his best basketball is still ahead of him. But the one thing that is very, I think it's uniform right now in terms of what most all-NBA teams are looking for, except if you're looking for maybe a piece, is guys who can pass, dribble, and shoot. And Jabari, obviously, with that size and with his versatility, to me, he fits exactly what the NBA is turning to right now.
There are not many 7-footers who are really terrific pick-and-pop three guys. And then there's Chet Holmgren. Boy, is this the modern NBA coming to the front tonight, the second pick?
I think it is, Steve. Look, if you're asking me, I'm taking him number one.
Right, yeah.
I just really believe that with his skill set, with his, again, he's a two-way player. He plays on both ends of the floor. The one thing that you really didn't even see a lot of that I've seen him in high school and through AAU is that he can really pass the ball too. Yeah. So I think he's got everything that you'd want in the modern day NBA. And again, as you know, Steve, as a coach, as a front office person in the NBA, you're looking at trying to improve your team for the most important thing, and that is to win. And I think in every aspect, Chet Holmgren helps you win in so many different ways.
Well, and here's a part I think is very underrated, but he is, to me, and I've only watched him on TV, I haven't seen him in person, he is a fabulous weak side shot blocker. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. I think and you know what, to your point, when he does block shots, he keeps them in play, right? A la Bill Russell.
Yes.
And I think that's another side of his, just, again, he's very instinctive. I love the word instinctive when you talk about him, because even on the defensive end of the floor, and it maybe not necessarily in blocking shots, but just guarding the basketball, again, he's lacking some strength. We know that, but he's very, very instinctive. And I think, again, those with that type of size and with his skill set, and you have those kind of instincts with his skill and versatility, to me, it's a generational talent.
Yeah. Paolo Banchero has the big name. What kind of game do you think he has on the NBA level?
Again, I think if you're asking, I'm going Chet Holmgren 1, and I'm going Paolo 2, and I'm going Jabari 3. And the only reason I say that is because, look, here you have, he's the most physically ready, right? I mean, right now, Paolo at 6'10", 250, he's ready to go into the NBA and physically compete with these guys. The one thing about him, again, very skilled, three-level scorer. He's a matchup nightmare at his size. Really has improved his ball handling in a year. And again, lost in all of that, similar to that of Chet Holmgren. He's an excellent passer.
Yeah.
But one question I have with him is I'd like to see him go after the ball in the glass a little more in his area and out of his area. But again, I think he's the most ready, Steve, physically to come into the NBA and really help right now.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, Scott, because earlier on the show I was talking about prospects, and my two biggest concerns about Banchero would be, one, he's not a shot blocker at 6'10", and number two, he's not an aggressive rebounder at 6'10". But all the other stuff I love about him. The Jay Nivey, he and Sharp are probably the best two, quote, athletes in the draft. I found it interesting that Sacramento asked him to work out twice and he wouldn't go.
Wow.
And Sacramento is sitting there at 4. When he goes the same speed as the ball, Scott, how good is he?
Shaedon Sharpe, honestly, is his upside and his potential. Now, those are kind of, risky words, right? Like, but when you have that type of athleticism, with his length, his motor, all of the things that you kind of look for in terms of what the NBA is today, and then you add it, he takes it even up a notch athletically. Here's a young player who really does have, sky is truly the limit for this young man. Now, again, work ethic, coaching, willingness to get better, film, everything he's going to need to do. And I'm sure, again, I don't know a lot about that, but I've only heard great things about his character.
Yep.
So you would think that he's a guy that's going to come into the NBA and just get better and better and better. And again, with that type of athleticism, my goodness, he could be a special player in the NBA for a long time.
And what about Ivy?
One thing about Jaden Ivey that really impresses me is when you really watch him, his overall, his speed, his motor, again, gifted athletically. But I like the fact that he can play at different paces, right? Like in transition, he is an elite level transition player, which a lot of times in the NBA, you're going to get out and run. I think he's as good making decisions, finishing at all three levels as any potentially guard right now in the draft. But what I like about him is that you can also put him in the half court. You can put him on the ball. You can put him off the ball. He's good in the pick and roll, dribble handoffs in terms of making decisions. But again, you have another player that can play multiple positions with versatility, and he's got a tremendous upside in terms of where he could be someday.
Oh, when he goes the same speed as the ball, because obviously I had a chance to see him several times in person. And he made a play at the end of the Penn State game in the Big Ten tournament where it looked like you and me weaving our way through traffic on the interstate, Scott. It's like, going, what the heck? It's you and me on 128 on a Friday on 4 lanes of fun.
I love it.
I figure I'd go with something you and I could relate to.
Amen, brother. I can relate to that.
Hey, Keegan Murray I watched him in his second year, and I was like, okay, he got better, and this year really got better. Now he's a little older at 21. What do you like about Keegan Murray's game?
Well, first of all, I think that age is really overrated. Again, I think when you start talking, numerical age, every kid develops physically and mentally at his or her own pace, and they have their own path. And I think, again, just me and over the years of watching players, I think that's a very overrated, thing as it relates to, well, he's young, so he's going to become great. That's no guarantee.
Right.
I really feel like there's too much of an emphasis on age, numerical age, right? What about physical and mental maturation? Yeah. We don't know that. But again, to your point, I saw Keegan at DME Academy down in Daytona Beach, Florida, at a prep school when he was in high school, and he was always that guy that had a pure 3-point stroke. He could really shoot the basketball, and a big credit to Coach McCaffrey and his staff to the development, their player development with him, and allowing him to play through mistakes. And he's now become a player that can pass, dribble, and shoot. He can play multiple positions. He's obviously, as we know, a pure 3-point shooter. And again, he's a guy that I think is going to have a tremendous career in the NBA as long as, some of this is fit and how his, what they're looking for in the respective teams that draft these guys. But man, did he, to your point, he really, really improved during his time in Iowa. Wow.
He made a tip in at the end of regulation against Penn State where if anybody has any question about his athleticism, I would like you to rack up that tape. Okay, so it's just okay, yeah. And I can say that with joy because Penn State won the game. All right, so so all it did was extend it 5 minutes.
That's a great memory. Well, if he tipped it in at the buzzer and they lost, we wouldn't be talking about this, right?
No, I would have bypassed it, Coach.
I don't blame you.
That's just the kind of guy I am. Johnny Davis is interesting to me because the funny thing about Johnny Davis is all the games that I've done where I saw him play in person, he never played well in person. But the games I saw on TV, he played really well. How much do you – this guy to me, is a great competitor. How much does that enter into an evaluation, a guy's pure competitiveness?
Look, for me personally, one of the things over the years that I used to really become attracted to is when you can find that basketball player who also played football. And I think with him, he was that quarterback. We had a kid at Boston College, Kai Bowman, who originally signed North Carolina for football, and he was just, again, as a basketball player, hopefully he gets over this ACL and he's back. But my point is that football side of what he brings to the table with that tenacity, that toughness. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. All of those things are going to translate to the NBA. He's not going to be afraid of the moment. Mm-hmm. Look, people question maybe his percentage from the three. He's only going to get better there because of all the shoot-arounds. But here's the other thing. When you have that type of toughness to you, you'll will shots in. And I think that football side of it really helps out a lot, especially when you get to this stage. But I think he's going to be a tremendous player in the NBA. Yeah. Again, versatile, he rebounds, he's tough. And again, all the things that you're looking for with him, to me, translate.
Malachi Branham, he has a fabulous mid-range game. When you have a fabulous mid-range game and you talk about the number of shoot-arounds that you go through, can you become a better three-point shooter?
Absolutely. I think that's the one thing in the NBA. Look, as you know, Steve, we're limited in the NCAA with how many hours you can work with the guys in the summer, you have your 4-hour rule and so on and so forth. But, look, when you have a kid like him, Malachi, that his mid-range game is there. That's kind of a lost art, right now in basketball, but it's still – I remember the story of Chris Middleton with Milwaukee, and the one thing about Chris, he had a pure three-point shooting stroke, but he was deadly from the mid-range game, and he still is to this point, to this day. But I think sometimes where Chris, and I think the game of basketball has gone, and most of the analytics will say, layups or threes. Right. So Chris is one of the guys that's kind of defied that, as some of the other guys have, over their time too, right? Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, obviously mid-range game. But I think Malachi has the ability to score in that mid-range, an uncanny ability to score against anyone. But to your point, he'll get better from the three-point. And sometimes you got to see past what the young man is doing within the system he's playing in, because, look, every coach is trying to win, so they're trying to play to these guys are playing to their strengths, and sometimes they can do other things, but again, the system doesn't allow them to do that. But I do think he'll get better on that side, especially making three-point shots throughout his time in the NBA.
And one final guy, I don't want to take up too much of your time. He's a little older. E.J. Liddell, who's Malachi's teammate at Ohio State. What do you think about E.J. Liddell, especially as an inside-out player?
Look, physically, right? he is a man-child, right? Yeah. He is so physically just talented. I will tell you this about him, and I mean this. He got so much better even during the short time that he was there, and watching him. And the one thing that really stood out to me is that he really was one of those guys. You can talk about taking advantage of matchups, but he actually did it. And he would exploit matchups at any time. So he's got that ability to, again, in the NBA with all the switching that's going on in the perimeter with dribble handoffs and ball screens, again, he's going to be a matchup nightmare. And he's one of those guys that if you really dig deep into what he does, he really does a really good job of making the right basketball play and exploiting matchups. But again, he'll get better from the three-point line. He's going to be a guy that's just going to continue to improve in a lot of different areas. But I just love the fact that he's a matchup nightmare to me, and he does understand how to exploit those matchups.
Exactly. I felt, Scott, that he played with an NBA mindset in college. Look, the number of free throws that I broadcast of him against Penn State, it's a pretty long list. Dick Girardi's going back to the line again. Now, I didn't say they were all the right calls, Scott. But
I'm sure they weren't. But he was a great free throw shooter.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a drive me nuts. He's in that 78, 80%. You know, I'm like, oh, great.
Well, and the one thing that really improved with him, think about this, like his freshman year, he was like shooting almost like 20% from the 3-point line. And last year he was up to 38%, and his numbers went up. And you see that kind of improvement with a young man with that body at 6'7", which is about 240, 245. I mean, he's a guy that's, again, he's obviously in the gym. He's working. He's into player development, getting better. That's the key. Just keep getting better. So, again, he's definitely somebody that is just going to continue to get better throughout his NBA time.
And the people at Ohio State tell you, as a locker room guy, they say he is awesome. So that doesn't hurt your cause either. It is always a pleasure talking hoops with you, my friend. Thank you so much for the time you gave us again today.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Okay, best of luck. Hopefully we can catch